We spend like a really large portion of our lives looking out for the meteor.
Oh, yeah. Like the sudden, massive, catastrophic event.
Right. The unexpected job loss or a dramatic illness or a total financial ruin.
Exactly. The big, flashy stuff.
Yeah, we are constantly scanning the horizon for this giant life-altering impact that's just going to turn everything upside down. But, I mean, what if the thing that actually takes you down isn't the meteor at all?
Right. What if it's the termite?
The termite, yes. That tiny, practically invisible force that just quietly chews away at your foundation, day after day, week after week, until one day the floor just falls right out from under you.
It's a terrifying thought, honestly.
It really is. And that's our mission for today's deep dive. We're looking into a really fascinating translated essay from 2007 by an author named Xu Fenging, and it's all about his physics-based theory of what he calls small load energy.
Yeah. And the framework of this source material is just so compelling because it really forces us to confront our own blind spots.
Yeah.
I mean, we dedicate so much of our cognitive bandwidth to avoiding those massive life disasters we just talked about.
Right, totally.
But this text serves as a pretty stark, literal warning about the micro impacts that we dismiss every single day.
So let's jump right into the physical reality of this, because the origin of this theory is incredibly literal. It's not just a metaphor.
No, not at all.
The author talks about being taken on a field trip by a teacher to the Zhangjiakou Exploration Machinery Factory. And the entire purpose of this trip was to observe firsthand how the structural properties of metal are tested.
Right, they're essentially torturing metal to find its absolute physical limits.
Yeah.
They take these massive metal rods and put them into industrial testing machines to measure, like, tensile strength, how hard the metal can be pulled before it just snaps.
Pulling it apart.
Exactly. And they measure compressive strength by seeing how much weight it can bear before it crushes, and bending strength by pushing it until it warps.
Yeah.
They basically find out exactly how much sheer brute force it takes to destroy the metal instantly. That's the meteor impact.
Right. But then the engineers do something completely different, which is the crux of this whole thing. They subject the metal to continuous, repeated, small load impacts.
Yeah, just tiny forces.
Tiny forces applied over and over and over again. And the core finding that really shifts the author's worldview here is that no matter how incredibly tough the metal is, I mean, we're talking about heavy industrial metal here, if it is subjected to continuous small loads, it eventually fractures and breaks.
It's wild to think about. But to understand why that happens, we have to look at the actual physics of what the author witnessed. It's a process known as metal fatigue.
Okay.
It isn't just magic, it's microscopic geometry. Metals are made up of these crystalline structures packed really tightly together.
Right.
So when a tiny load hits the metal, it might not bend the rod visibly, but it creates a microscopic dislocation at the atomic level. It's like a tiny slit between those crystal grains.
Wow. Okay. So even though the rod looks perfectly fine to the naked eye, the internal architecture is like physically shifting.
Precisely. And if you apply that small load thousands of times, those microscopic slips merge into a micro crack.
Oh, I see.
The metal still looks completely solid, but its structural integrity is totally compromised at that point. One more seemingly harmless tap, and the crack propagates rapidly, and the entire rod just snaps abruptly.
That is wild. The text actually uses an ancient maxim to visualize this, right? A rope saws through wood, and water drops pierce stone.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit for how it applies to you and me, because I always think about a smartphone battery.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like, human resilience is essentially your phone's battery life. The meteor is dropping your phone into a swimming pool. Total instantaneous destruction.
Yep, game over.
But small load energy, that is like having 20 heavy apps running in the background. You don't see them. They are just quietly pinging servers, refreshing data, draining the battery 1% at a time.
Just eating away at it.
Exactly. You think you have a full charge, and then suddenly, right when you need to make an emergency call, the screen just goes black.
What's fascinating here is that the battery analogy works perfectly for the cumulative effect, but it kind of implies a passive draining.
Oh, true.
The text actually suggests this is a violently active physical process, much like those atomic slip planes in the metal. The physical law governing that iron rod at the Zhangjiakou factory is the exact same law governing your life.
That is so intense.
It is. The text points out that a one-time heavy blow can absolutely traumatize a person, sure, but it insists that the continuous, unnoticeable, small load impacts are actually the primary culprits in ruining a person's life.
Okay, so if atomic structures and solid iron fail under micro impacts, how does this, like, invisible accumulation of stress manifest in the macro world? Because the text scales this up to our daily environments, and the examples are just agonizingly
They
relatable.
really are.
Like a tiny grain of sand in a shoe,
Right. It's not a boulder blocking your path. It is a tiny irritant, but it physically forces you to stop walking.
or a tiny speck of dust in the eye, making it literally impossible to see. Or, on a heavier note, the chronic low-grade pain of a bedridden loved one that forces a caregiver to slowly, inevitably abandon their grand ambitions.
Yeah, that one hits hard. And the author then scales it up to our ecosystems, too. Like, how does a pure river die?
Just one factory discharging a trickle of sewage?
Exactly. Or how does a clean street become filthy? One person spits, another drops a single gum wrapper. It's gradual.
And we see the exact same erosion in social groups. The text introduces this concept of the family thief.
Oh, I found this part so interesting.
Right. Someone who steals tiny amounts daily, completely unnoticed, until the household's wealth is just totally drained. Or the rumor monger in an office. They just whisper small, seemingly harmless comments.
But that small load energy introduces micro cracks into the team's cohesion.
Exactly. Eventually, the group just shatters into conflict. The text literally uses the phrase, one rotten apple spoils the whole barrel.
It does.
But, I do have to push back on this premise just a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because if a grain of sand is just a grain of sand, why don't we just, I don't know, dump out our shoe? We constantly tell ourselves, don't sweat the small stuff, right? So why is human nature so incredibly bad at recognizing these micro cracks before the metal snaps?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really because of the way our attention is biologically engineered. Think of human perception as a smoke detector. A smoke detector is brilliantly designed to shriek the moment there is a blazing fire, right? It demands that you react to the sudden, acute threat. Exactly.
Yeah.
But a smoke detector is completely incapable of detecting the slow, silent accumulation of carbon monoxide. You don't notice it. You just slowly fall asleep and never wake up.
Wow. Yeah.
The text illustrates this limitation perfectly with two examples. First, an anthill. We step over anthills every day. We don't even think about them. But if an anthill is built into a 1,000-mile-long defensive dike,
Oh, man.
yeah, that microscopic structural compromise will eventually cause the entire dike to collapse under water pressure.
And the second example the author gives is a tiny pinhole in a gas pipe. Barely visible, seemingly completely harmless, but if you ignore it, it leads to a massive explosion. The text is basically demanding that we recalibrate our internal sensors to detect the carbon monoxide, not just the smoke.
Which naturally brings us to the most vulnerable structure of all.
Yeah.
I mean, we can visibly see a dike collapse or a gas pipe explode. But how does this invisible accumulation of stress manifest in a system we can't observe? The human mind.
Yeah, and the text makes a really profound claim here. It states that life is objectively difficult, sure, but what usually breaks a person isn't the harsh external conditions. It is the constant impact of small load forces from within.
The author goes so far as to argue that suicide and self-destruction are rarely caused by a single catastrophic failure. They are the final snap of the metal after continuous internal small load impacts.
It's heavy, but it makes so much sense mechanically. And to explain how we inflict these impacts on ourselves, the text pulls this fascinating quote from an ancient text called the Sutra of Land Celestial Beings.
Yes, I love this part.
It says, quote, avoid anger at dawn. It harms the lungs and damages the liver.
This is where ancient wisdom and modern biology just intersect perfectly. When the text warns that frequent morning anger causes shortness of breath and poor liver function, it is describing what modern science calls allostatic load.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah. When you wake up angry or stressed, your body dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. If this happens every single morning, your baseline stress level remains artificially high.
You never come back down to normal.
Exactly. Your cardiovascular system and metabolic organs like your liver, they never get to rest. Physiologically, you are taking a hammer to the iron rod of your immune system every single day at 7:00 a.m.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because psychologically, you also guarantee a full day of low energy and mental exhaustion. And because of this, the source explicitly warns us, like, this is a rule within a family or a workplace. You must never criticize or nitpick each other in the morning.
Never.
It is completely off limits. Mornings are strictly for encouragement. If you have dissatisfaction, the text insists you absolutely must save it for the afternoon or the evening.
Which alters the entire geometry of a conflict.
Totally.
I mean, the idea of scheduling your frustration for 3:00 p.m. sounds absurd at first, but physically, it is a brilliant preservation strategy.
It changes everything about how we communicate. The sheer practicality of scheduling your arguments is just genius to me. I think about it like a road trip, you know?
Okay, how so?
Giving someone morning criticism is like tapping a tiny crack into a car's windshield right before they embark on a bumpy 12-hour drive.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That crack looks completely manageable in the driveway. It's just a little ding. But as they hit every pothole, the stress of the journey pushes and pulls on that glass. By the time they arrive, that tiny crack has spider-webbed across the entire windshield.
That is a perfect analogy. Long-term exposure to just a few hurtful words at the start of the day, especially from people close to you, like spouses, parents, or colleagues, acts as that constant small load impact. The text argues this repetitive microstress directly leads to declining health, collapsed businesses, and ruined futures.
It is terrifying when you visualize the damage happening under the surface like that. So the big question is, how do we stop the cracking? Because now that you, the listener, understand the mechanics of small load energy, now that you see the real danger of morning microaggressions, how do you actually protect your structural integrity?
Well, the author provides a pretty clear two-part protocol. The first is an internal defense. We are required to maintain a relentlessly positive, determined spirit.
Right.
The text uses traditional idioms like, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and heaven never seals off all the exits.
It's basically cognitive load bearing.
Yes.
You are reinforcing your own structural integrity through optimism, so the micro impacts just sort of bounce off.
Exactly. But the second part is external, and the author is uncompromising here. To protect against these continuous impacts, we must proactively guard against people who are chronically pessimistic. The text instructs us to literally say goodbye to those who frequently criticize, nitpick, nag, and spread pessimistic views.
Okay, in a perfect world, sure, that sounds great. But let's apply this to reality for a second.
Okay.
How do you actually enforce this goodbye protocol when the small load energy is coming from, say, a manager you can't just fire or a mother-in-law you have to see every Sunday? You can't exactly just walk into a performance review and say, excuse me, Suifeng from 2007 says I have to say goodbye to you now.
This raises an important question, and it really is the ultimate challenge of this framework. But here's the key. The text doesn't just view pessimists and critics as difficult personalities. It classifies them objectively as mechanical threats to your structural integrity.
Oh, I see.
They are literally the testing machine at the Zhangjiakou factory.
So you have to reclassify them in your own mind.
Yes. Understanding them as a mechanical force, a literal small load energy, gives you the objective framing needed to create emotional distance when physical distance is impossible.
Right.
In psychology, this aligns really closely with what's called the gray rock method.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so when your boss starts nitpicking or a relative starts nagging, you stop absorbing their words as a reflection of your worth. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock.
Just totally neutral.
Exactly. You recognize it objectively. This is just small load energy trying to find my grain boundaries. By refusing to engage emotionally, you become unbendable metal. You stop being a participant in the destruction test.
You just let the testing machine run its cycle without breaking you. That is incredibly empowering. And it really brings the core message of this essay full circle. I mean, we started at the Zhangjiakou machinery factory, watching heavy metal bend and snap under continuous tiny forces.
Did.
We saw how the exact same physics applies to the macro world. You know, the factory polluting the river, the rumor monger destroying a team, the grain of sand stopping the journey.
And we explored the devastating biological and psychological damage of morning anger and why ancient wisdom demands we save our criticisms for the afternoon to prevent our own windshields from shattering.
Right. And finally, we looked at the ultimate defensive maneuver. Recognizing chronic pessimists as structural threats, and using emotional distance to protect our iron rod from their small load energy. So for you listening, your mission this week is to do a structural audit of your own life.
That's a great idea.
Take a look around. What are the tiny, repetitive, seemingly insignificant negative forces that act as carbon monoxide in your daily routine?
And perhaps a bit more uncomfortably, where are you unconsciously applying small load energy to others? Are you tapping on someone else's windshield before they even start their day?
Oof. That is a tough question to sit with, but it is so vital. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over that kind of turns this entire theory on its head.
Let's hear it.
We've spent this deep dive analyzing the destructive power of this concept. The source material proves beyond a doubt that continuous, tiny negative impacts can snap solid steel over time. But what happens if we reverse the polarity? What could the long-term impact of deliberate, tiny, positive inputs achieve? Like, if continuous morning criticisms can destroy a life, what could daily, targeted micro-encouragements build?
Oh, I love that.
Right. If negative small loads have the power to break metal, could positive small loads be the exact force needed to forge it?
It is the water drop piercing the stone, but utilized for creation instead of erosion.
Exactly. Stop scanning the horizon for the meteor and start paying attention to the power of the termite. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be right here waiting to unpack the next one with you.